Let's convert our project to a multi-sub-project system. Hello everyone, this is Ali Reza. Welcome to the Mentor Code Lab. At the end of previous episode, I developed a system that each project was a standalone project working for itself, and you could just build each one of them one after another and get done with it. However, at the end of that video, I didn't mention how you can collect everything under one mod. The easiest way would be to create a new project called Ultra.io, and you would include every build, every jar into the final product. That is a homework for you. However, in this video, we will start converting our project to what you see right now in front of yourself, a multi-sub project system. I did this approach because it's easier to add each one of those projects separately and then convert them to a sub project just like what you see. However, I'm not gonna code it in front of the camera because it will take a lot of time, and honestly, it's not a big deal. However, I will talk about every single step that you need to do so that your project will work. Before I start talking about it, I should mention something. For some odd reason, whenever I'm trying to generate data on the sub projects other than the base, every now and then I get an error about a null key on the base project. In those circumstances, I have to come back to the base, open the tasks and fabric, and run the data gen on the base, and then run the data gen on the sub projects. However, because our base is finished, chances are that we won't see that. Because of this error, I had to add lots of registers in it inside the base project in many different classes. Basically, whenever I'm using datagen or I'm using the registers class, it got rid of most of these problems, but every now and then I still see that null key. If I find where the problem was, I will inform you in another video and we will talk about it. So as you see inside base block tag provider, although I'm not using registers, I'm initializing the register at the start of the configure, and this happens in many different classes. So I will move through the classes one after another and show where I'm doing this in it. Base block tag provider was one of them, then the language provider, then the base entity tag provider, then the item tag provider, base loot table provider, recipe provider, configured features at the start of the bootstrap and at the start of init. In both cases, the placed feature is the same at the start of the class for bootstrap and at the start of init in both cases. Word generation on the configure, base item group. Now we will have to talk about this a little bit in future, so I will close the other classes. Moving forward, I have it under base model provider for the initialization, and that's it. However, we have two problems that we need to talk about them. The first one is in base model provider. If you recall, we had these texture pools and we were hoping that these texture pools would work whenever we go into the decoration to read these texture pools, and honestly that will not work because the texture pools are being assigned inside generate block state models, and for that we need the generator. So we can't do what we are doing in base item groups. Basically we are calling a static block. If you know Java, this static block will happen every time we call this class, even if we don't call any method on it. At the very first time the system sees these base item groups, it will call this static block. It's somewhat close to inline initialization. However, because I need to call the registers here, I can't do the inline initialization. The workaround is to use the static block, call the registers in it, and then I can use the registers class inside the static block and assign the values to the keys. Coming back to the model provider, the way to call and get these texture pools is by using access widener, and we will talk about access widener in few episodes forward. But before that, keep in mind this will not work. After all of this, now we are ready to convert our project to a multi-base project. For multi-sub project, we start with one build.gradle at the root of the project. As you see, these are our sub projects. We add a build.gradle on the root, a gradle.properties, and settings.gradle. Now let's start with settings.gradle. In settings.gradle, as you see, I added the root project name and included every sub project. And you should use the colon and the name of the sub project. Now this name should be the name of the folder, but as I said, I keep the same naming convention between the folders and mod IDs so that everywhere I see this, I don't care if it is using the name of the folder or the mod ID, they are the same. After the settings.gradle, we go into the gradle.property. Now here we have a section that is dedicated for the mod ID of the root project. And as you see, I dissected it into different groups, a Maven group and Maven artifact. Now, I'm not publishing these mods under Maven, but it's a good thing to have it. Then the archive base name, as you see, has a space. This is being used when you generate your jar files. It is putting a space there. And finally, we have a mod ID. After that, we have the normal stuff for Fabric, the dependencies, all the way to the end, and finally one mod properties for mod version. Now keep in mind, this is the only Gradle properties that is this busy. The next ones will be really small. We will talk about them in a few minutes. After having this, we can come back and talk about build.gradle. Now, as you see, I synced the project, and because of that, at the end of each one of these build.gradle, I have a parenthesis, and inside that parenthesis, it's putting the name of the project. So this is the main project. This is a sub-project called Ultra.io base, and we identify it by the column here. Okay, at the build.gradle for the main project, at the root of the project, we normally have the plugins, the base, and as you see, I use this syntax for the base so that I can have this space in the naming. Then the version. Now, I was not sure about this version until recently. The use for this version is not inside the build.gradle, but internally, the building process will use this version to add it at the end of the name for the jar files. Basically, if I comment this line and build the whole project, you will see that I will get ultra.io-effect, then -source.jar. So the version will not show up. If that was the case for you, make sure that you have this version equals something inside your build.gradle. And as you see, I'm reading the root project mod version. Then we have the repositories that I have here. Fabric API. Now for Fabric API, I have this mod ID equals something. Normally, you won't see that inside the template generated file. This will tell the system that if I run the data generation task under Ultra.io tasks Fabric here, it should look for this mod ID, and it shouldn't generate the data for any other project. Basically, if I run the data generation right now, it will do nothing because, well, the main project is empty, but we will have it under each sub project so that when I, for example, run the data gen under Cable, it won't run data gen on base or any other projects. It will dedicate that data gen task to the cables. Now we have the dependencies. These are the Minecraft dependencies. And of course, we have our libraries, we have our dependencies as other third-party applications. However, if you notice, now I have this include inside parenthesis implementation project path colon, and yes, you have to type it Ultra.io base, comma, configuration colon, you have to type it named elements. Be careful about typos here. And I'm including every one of my projects. At the end, if I open this Ultra.io jar inside Explorer and I take a look at the content with something like WinRAR, we have this meta.inf folder. If I open it inside jars, we see that we have the third-party applications, but I have the jar files for every sub project. Don't worry if it has -dev at the end, doesn't matter, it will work. So this way, I'm making sure that I'm including every project inside the final main jar file. After the dependencies comes the interesting part. We have process resources, and inside process resources, I have the version, loader version, game version, Java version, as you see, but then I added this mod ID. So if I open the source for the main and go into resources, fabric mod JSON, you see that for the ID, I'm using the same trick that we learned in previous videos. So basically, that process resources will replace the mod ID. Then the same thing is happening here. Finally, you see that I added another one for file matching under mixin.json. I don't have any mixin here, but if I had it, then I want to use the mod ID for the mixin. So it would be ultra.io.mixins.json. I will look into that file, find the Java version, replace the Java version. We will take a look at the mixins later, so don't worry. We have this publishing section, although I'm not using the Maven as I said, but I did put it here to make sure that it is ready for any possible scenarios. And as you see, I'm using the Maven group, Maven artifact, and mod version. Finally, comes to the tasks. Now, this is the tricky part. In previous videos, you saw a task that would work on each sub-project. It would take each one of the sources and the final builds and put them under folders. Here, I had some problems. So these three are normal tasks that you get from template generator. However, now we have some custom tasks. And as you see, they are really different from what we had before. To understand these tasks, we should start from top and move one after another. The first task is the clean. Normally, if we assume that we moved everything properly under folders, when we run the clean task from the build, we want to make sure that we deleted every one of these sub-projects, only the ones with the proper version. And we should clear all of them because each time you build under the main mod, it will generate all of these jar files. So we start to define a version pattern. And as you can see, we got it from root project mod version. Then we define two folders. We start from project root directory / build src, and we renamed the folder to build underline mod, because now we have a build folder sitting here and we don't want to interfere with that. Then we print two different things. First, we start the cleaning task. This is the version we want to clean. And finally, we look into each one of those two folders and we look for the files. We find a file that the name contains the mod version. We delete the file and we print that, hey, we deleted this file. So one is working with the source directory, the other one with the mod directory. After that, we have two different tasks that are almost identical. One is for copying the source jars. As you see, we start with the same folder definition. Here we just define the build underline source folder. And first, we check if this folder does not exist, we create that folder. After that, we go into each sub-project. For each sub-project, we get the files that are under the sub-project build directory /libs/. We include everything -sources.jar, and no matter how many files we found, for each file, we print that we want to move it. And finally, we move every file that we found into the subfolder for the source. After this section, we look into the main project. Remember, this was the sub-projects, because the main project will have a build folder, and under libs, it will create the ultra io -version -source. And we want to move this one to the sub-project. So again, the code is exactly like this section, but instead of sub-project, we look into the project build directory and the project name, and that's it. Almost identical to this task, we have another task that works on the mod files. And we go with the folder definition. We create the folder if it's not there. For each sub-project, we take the files, everything that is jar, but here we exclude *-sources. Remember, even if we run this task before the move mod jars, the source jars are remaining inside the sub-project. We are copying things, not moving things, as you see. So we have to exclude the sources. Then again, we print and move, and we do the same thing for the main folder, and that's our mod main jars. Then we have another task that is saying delete build directory, and we do it first. We go into the sub-projects, we delete the build directory on the sub-projects, and finally, we delete the build directory on the main project. Now we have another section. To make things work properly and in proper order, we have to define extra things. We didn't have to do it before, but now we want to make sure that the sub-projects are built first, and then the main project is being built, and the movement of these files are in order. So for each sub-project, we apply Java plugin, and now we say if we have a jar task, this is a Java task, it's internal, do something for us. Make sure that jar task is finalized by something. That something is root project tasks, copy source, copy mod, and then delete build directories. This means that whenever we are building things under sub-projects, we will keep these three on the hibernation until that build process on the sub-project is finished. When that build sub-project is finished, then we can move and do these three tasks. Basically, we are holding until the build is finished. Then we do the same thing for the main jar, and you see that the main jar should be finalized by copies and then the delete. And from here on, I will jump down first and then talk about these two. Because we are finalizing the build with these three tasks, we need to tell the system what is the order of operation. And you had seen this part already. So we say the copy source should run after the build, move jars for mod should happen after the source, and the deleting build directory should happen after the mod. Okay, and finally we say build is finalized by source, mods, and build directory. You may say this is the same as this one. No, keep in mind here we are calling the jar task, not the build task. The jar task is responsible of collecting everything and putting them in the jar file. And the build that finalized by is the magic that will call each one of these three one after another after the jar is being provided. Now, if we don't have this section and run the build task, we will see that we have some errors saying that, hey, copy source jar needs to depend on something, that something should happen before this one. And normally they are remap sources. So we have to say that copy source jar depends on our sub-project's remap source jar. And for each sub-project, we have to add it line after line here. Of course, I could make a loop and make things fancier using a loop like this one. However, this is much faster, this is much easier with much more control and more understandable. So we are saying that, hey, to do the copy source jar, make sure that each one of these remap source jars are finished, because it's depending on these. So it will finish the remap source jars, then it will attempt the copy source jar. Same things for the mod jars. However, instead of the source jar, we are remapping the jar itself, and we add these dependencies to this task. And finally, at the end of this whole mumbo jumbo, we have our main project build.gradle ready. However, keep in mind, we have to add the source under the root of the project, main, Java, and resources. We have to have this fabric mod JSON, and you can pause the video and take a look. The thing is that, as you see, I'm adding dependencies to these subprojects in here. This means that if I run the Minecraft client now under the main, and we will talk about this in a few minutes, there is a bottleneck here that you need to be aware of. But if I run it right now, it will try to initialize all the subprojects first, and then it will come back to the main mod. Because if we don't have this dependency section under the fabric mod JSON for the main file, the order of initializing of these tasks and subprojects are random. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work, because, for example, the main mod will try to load before the base and things not work. However, adding these dependencies at the end of the fabric mod JSON makes sure that main mod will wait for every subproject and then being initialized. And the rest is just everything that we learned for mod menu so far. Now, for each subproject, things are almost identical. We have the plugin, we have the base. Take note, each base now is using the project archive base name, not the root project. But for the versioning, we are reading the root project, because we don't want to have this mod version at the end of each one of these Gradle properties on subprojects. And each one of these Gradles now are reading this value from the root project, and we just need to change this one and everything will work. Other than that, we have the repositories. There is nothing new there. Fabric API, as you see, we are using project.modid. For dependencies, I added Minecraft and then the libraries. However, take note, each one of them are now using root project. Process resources is using root project other than the mod ID. Publishing is using the root project for the version, but project for the Maven group and Maven artifact. And then we have 3 built-in tasks for templates. We are not adding these mumbo jumbo custom tasks to every subproject anymore. And finally, each one of these projects has their own Gradle properties, and as you see, they are just using Maven groups, Maven artifacts, Maven base name, and mod ID, and that is it. And as you see, for the publishing, we are using project here. Now, the base is simple, the dependencies are simple. For the other ones, they are almost identical. The main thing that is changing is the dependency. For example, the battle is now depending on the base and effect, and as you see, I'm just implementing the project and not including it. We don't need to include anything here. So these are how we add subprojects to each one of these projects, and the rest is the history. Something that I forgot to mention, under the main project, you still need that entry for the main, as you see here. And this main is almost empty. All we are doing is just logging the main here and nothing else. And all of these subprojects are almost identical. As I said, the only dependency is just the project dependency. So I'm not gonna walk you through every one of them. However, if I open the battle, for example, and if I go into source, resources, and open the fabric mod JSON, you will see that at the end of the dependencies, I added 2 subprojects as I added them inside the build.gradle. And you need to make sure that these are working correctly. Finally, I keep this main decoration open because, as I said, we will have to work on access widener in few episodes forward, and the decoration block needs to have that texture pool. The last thing that you need to be sure is that when you move your JSON files from your previous project into this project, each one of these identifiers need to change, especially for the JSONs that are defining the models. And as you see, animal feed, for example, here we had UIO. I changed it to ultra IO underline machina. If I don't do that, the model is not being loaded, nothing is working. Same for chunk loader. I have to make sure that I don't have UIO anywhere else. Ender chanter, printer, project table, and solar panel tesseract. These are the machines that has custom models. Finally, each one of the fabric mod JSONs has to be tweaked for the dependencies, and each one of them that has the dependency needs to have them added on the proper section. Finally, if you do everything properly, you are ready, and your project would be a multi-sub project. You just need to sync the Gradle, and you will have this, a hierarchy of projects, ultra IO on the top, and the bases on the sub projects. One thing to note is that each one of these sub projects does not have these settings.gradle anymore. None of the sub projects should have settings.gradle. Only the top level ultra IO project on the root of your whole system will have a settings.gradle. And this is how the system understands the hierarchy hierarchy of everything. Finally, when you sync the Gradle, you are ready to run your game. And this is where I said that we have a bottleneck. You should keep in mind that each one of these tasks are just like any normal Gradle project, meaning that they have their own build, they have their own fabric tasks being added. And for example, if I open the base tasks fabric, I see this run client. You shouldn't ever execute it now, because it will cause multiple instances of Minecraft being run at the same time. If you want to run the game, you can't even use the top level task fabric run client. It will again cause multiple Minecraft instances coming up. If you want to run the game, your only option is this Minecraft client that is being generated automatically. If for whatever reason this is not working and you delete these tasks, under the fabric you have this configure launch and configure client launch. You can run these two, and normally they should fix everything for you. And that's it. Basically now if I run the game, you will see that I have a single Minecraft coming up. Everything should work, and you will see every sub project being added to the game just like any normal game. However, I noticed that for some reason my project is running really slow. So under the run mods, under the root project, I added sodium. The rest are just there for different things. For example, I want to have REI in the game, I want to have mini HUD in the game and large fluid tanks in the game, so I added them. However, the sodium caused that lag that I was experiencing gone, and now I can just run the game like normal instances. I didn't encounter that lag when I add my mod into a normal instance of Minecraft game. However, under development environment, I experienced it, and that was a little bit of a problem. And if you were wise enough and looked at the console down, you saw that many different projects were processing resources and they were building and configuring. That's normal now. So your running time will take a little bit longer compared to a single project. And one last thing, if you come into help change memory settings, you will see that I increased the memory to 6 gigabyte. The reason is that we are building many sub projects at the same time. If I run the task build, that's where you should use your project now to build these jar files at the end of the road. However, now we have to build simultaneously some of the sub projects, and it will take much more memory compared to a single project. So I had to increase the virtual memory using help change memory settings. When you changed it, you have to save and restart the idea and it will work. I increased it gigabyte after gigabyte until I got it work. And the way you know that it's not working is that at the middle of build, your build task will be stopped and you will get a warning about virtual memory lacking, or I don't know, out of memory, something like that. And you will know that you have to increase your virtual machine's memory size. So I'm waiting for the build process to finish. As you see, it's taking a little bit longer because I'm doing multiple things at the same time and it's taking its own sweet time. Normally, when I'm not recording, when I'm not doing anything else other than coding for Minecraft, it's much faster. However, right now, the very first thing that I want to see is that other than these mumbo jumbo that I don't care about, when it's starting to log my entries for my mod initializations, I want to make sure that things are happening in order. And these Scala problems are coming from one of the mods that I added. If you ever wonder, it's this large fluid tank and its dependencies. I don't know, maybe scalable cats or the large fluid tank itself. There we go. Now we are initializing our mods. So as you see, these orders are random. I don't care about them. All I want to see is that the things that are depending to base should happen first. And you see that decoration is happening after the base. Well, effect is okay, but goo, storage, and battle, especially battle, I'm not sure if it will work because battle was depending on the base. However, if you are wondering about it, you can just come and open the battle, go into source, resources, fabric mod, JSON, and make sure that you have Ultra IO base as the dependency. Then the order here is not bothering you a lot. The last thing I want to see here should be Ultra IO. Basically, I don't want to see Ultra IO itself before many different things. For example, Machina and tools, these should normally happen after Ultra IO. Now, if you saw this happening, it's a little bit out of sync, but if things work now, it's okay. Normally it should work because we told the system what we are depending on. So as you see, Minecraft came up, and if I go into the game instance and I open the inventory, right now if I move one tab forward, I see that I have blocks. Yes, the decoration is not working because, as I said, for modeling the decorations we have things to do, but machines are working. Storage, I move things here. This is added as another project. Tools are just there, and then armor are there, ingredients and miscellaneous. And if you want to test test your mod, for example, right now, if I add a full sapphire equipment, I should have some effects. So let's see. If I add the helmet, yes, I have conduit power. If I have the chest plate, I have the saturation, the leggings add the dolphin grace, and this should add the invisibility, as you see, and lock, because the lock comes when I have a full set of armor. As you see, the armor is rendering properly. If I hit F5, there we go. You see the armor is there and I'm invisible. Now, one thing that was changed inside Minecraft 1.21.4 is that under your resources, assets, you have the equipment as before, but textures, if you look, now we have entity, equipment, humanoid leggings. I think it was this equipment JSON files that were sitting under model folder. It came up and it sits directly under your mod ID now, because the textures, I think it was just like that, but these JSON files were under the mod ID model equipment. Now you just drag and drop the equipment directly onto your mod ID and things will work here. Another change was related to your modeling of the armor, especially when it comes to, I think it was model materials. However, because I'm using my own library, now it's not a problem. If you want to take a look at that and wrap things up here, I have this get armor material. Normally, in previous version, we had our own render humanoid helpers added to registers, but this time I have this get armor materials. If I open it, you see that now I have a register key, returns new armor material, everything is there, and things had changed a little bit here. However, the bigger change happened to models. And as you see, I'm not calling the get humanoids anywhere else. Register armor, here we go. Previously, we had to use this build humanoid, and now we don't need to use that. We just accept a model generator and we generate an equipment key and a slot, and if it's diable or not, the slot is material, asset ID, get value, and this will be the ID. Apparently, I'm not using it anymore. Long story short, if you want to see what was changed here and between the two versions of Minecraft, you are not understanding anything, just go and take a look at vanilla. Inside vanilla, if I open the library and find the vanilla, and let's talk about this situation. If you see two versions of Minecraft being there, all of them the same, it's normal. One of the sub projects are adding something and the main project is adding the same thing, so don't worry about that. Then you have the Minecraft item equipment, armor materials, and for example, this is how vanilla is doing for the item materials right now. As you see, if you want to look at the data generation, you should go under data and you see everything related to the data gen here. It needs a little bit of searching to find things, because for example, the loot table is easy. You just open the loot table, vanilla, and you see the vanilla loot tables. Or recipes, for example, you see some of the recipe generators, and if I open the recipe generator, for example, here you see all the offerings, and under static I see how things are being generated, for example. But for something like models, it's a little bit hard to find them for the models, but you can do that, and that is why exactly I did these registers, for example, because now I don't need to care about what was going internal. I just register my model and everything will work. Your main entry, I think it's this main here, and we will dive into this few episodes later when we are talking about the texture pools and how the vanilla is doing it and how we can get access to something that is not available to us. And long story short, this data folder is where the Minecraft data generation is working. Just as I said, sometimes it's hard to find what you want. Normally, you have to open each one of them and especially pay attention to things like a static block or a bootstrap, and eventually you will find what you are looking for. That wraps things up. Basically, right now our project is ready, and as you saw, we only have a big, huge problem regarding our model for our decoration, because under the model decoration for the sub project, if I go into source, Java, DataGen, and the model provider, we don't have any access to the texture pools. You say that, hey, the texture pool is there. Yes, because I define them as public static. However, if I run the DataGen right now on the sub project, you will see that it will yell at me that this is null. We need to find a way to remove this code completely from here and the definitions and move them here and somehow get access to these blocks without regenerating the JSON model files. We will talk about it when the video comes. The aim of this video was to make sure that your project is being set up properly so that we can move forward from this point on and have fun building our mod and learning how to mod Minecraft more and more. If you like these videos, please subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and turn on that bell so that when I publish a new video, you will get informed. Have fun, everyone. Bye.